Commander Zektar stood on the bridge of his warship, watching the blue planet rotate slowly in the view screen. Earth, they called it. Such a simple name for such a simple world. His mandibles clicked with satisfaction as he reviewed the invasion plans one final time. "Sir, the fleet is in position," his second-in-command reported, her scales shifting to a confident purple. "All ships report ready for the assault." Zektar nodded, his four arms moving to various control panels. The Velkari Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds, and this backwater planet would be no different. The inhabitants called themselves humans, soft-skinned mammals who had barely mastered space travel. Their military forces were divided, their weapons primitive by Velkari standards. "Begin the attack," he ordered. The first wave of drop pods launched from the fleet, streaking through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. They targeted major population centers first: New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow. Standard procedure for any conquest. Strike hard, strike fast, break their spirit before they could organize resistance. The pods crashed into city streets, disgorging squads of Velkari warriors. Each soldier stood 3 meters tall, covered in natural armor plating that could deflect most projectile weapons. Their plasma rifles hummed with deadly energy as they marched through the streets. In New York, squad leader Thokvar led his unit through Times Square. The humans scattered before them like prey animals, screaming and running. Some brave ones tried to fight back with their chemical-propelled weapons, but the bullets bounced harmlessly off Velkari armor. "Too easy," Thokvar muttered through his communicator. "These humans offer no sport." But then something strange happened. A young human female, no more than a juvenile by their standards, didn't run. She stood in the middle of the street, holding what appeared to be a primitive communication device. She was recording them. Thokvar approached her, expecting her to flee. Instead, she smiled. Not a smile of surrender or fear, but something else. Something that made his scales itch uncomfortably. "You think you're scary?" she said in accented galactic standard. The Velkari had broadcast their demands in all Earth languages, and apparently some humans had learned theirs in return. "You haven't seen anything yet." Before Thokvar could respond, explosions rocked the street. Not from above, but from below. The pavement cracked and buckled as something detonated in the sewers. His squad stumbled, their formation breaking. From the smoke and debris, humans emerged. But these weren't the fleeing civilians from moments before. These humans wore military gear and moved with purpose. They carried weapons that looked primitive, but somehow felt dangerous. The battle was swift and brutal. The humans didn't fight like any species the Velkari had encountered. They didn't form battle lines or follow predictable patterns. They struck from shadows, used the environment as a weapon, and seemed to take impossible risks. One human soldier, bleeding from multiple wounds that would have killed most species, charged directly at Thokvar. The squad leader fired his plasma rifle, hitting the human square in the chest. The man stumbled, but didn't stop. He crashed into Thokvar with enough force to knock the larger alien down, then detonated an explosive device strapped to his chest. Thokvar's last thought before the explosion was that no rational species would turn themselves into weapons. Across the planet, similar scenes played out. The Velkari's overwhelming technological advantage meant nothing when the humans refused to fight conventionally. They poisoned their own water supplies to deny them to the invaders. They burned their own cities rather than let them be captured. They sent waves of volunteers on suicide missions that defied all logical military doctrine. On the command ship, Zektar watched the tactical displays with growing unease. The invasion was succeeding, barely. They were taking objectives, but at costs that shouldn't have been possible against such a primitive species. "Sir," his intelligence officer called out, "we're intercepting massive amounts of human communications. They're broadcasting everything. The entire invasion is being transmitted across their planet." "So?" Let them watch their defeat, Zektar growled. That's just it, sir. They're not treating it as a defeat. They're calling it entertainment. Some of them are placing wagers on how many of us each human soldier can take down before dying. Zektar's scales shifted to an uncomfortable yellow. What kind of species treats war as entertainment? The answer came 3 days later when the humans launched their counterattack. It wasn't their military that struck first, but their civilians. Across every occupied city, ordinary humans began resistance operations. Children threw improvised explosives. Elderly humans walked into Velkhari checkpoints and detonated hidden bombs. Workers sabotaged every piece of infrastructure the Velkhari tried to use. In London, a Velkhari patrol found themselves trapped in a building that had been rigged to collapse. As the structure came down around them, they could hear humans outside cheering, not with relief at survival, but with genuine joy at the destruction. Medical Officer Kretok treated the wounded and noticed something deeply disturbing. The humans they captured showed no signs of trauma response typical in conquered species. Their stress hormones were elevated, yes, but so were their pleasure chemicals. They were enjoying this. Commander, Kretok reported to Zektar, I've been analyzing human physiology. Their brains are unusual. They have redundant systems for overriding pain and fear. They can literally choose to ignore survival instincts that every other species in the galaxy considers hardwired. That's impossible, Zektar insisted. I thought so too. But look at this. Kretok brought up a holographic display. This is a scan of a human soldier we captured. See this area of the brain? It's lighting up the same regions associated with pleasure and reward. Sir, they're getting a biochemical high from combat. The revelation came as human forces began to push back in earnest. They had spent the first week learning Velkhari tactics, probing for weaknesses. Now they exploited every vulnerability with ruthless efficiency. Human pilots flew aircraft on collision courses with Velkhari ships, broadcasting music and laughter until the moment of impact. Ground forces used their own wounded as bait for ambushes. Civilians formed hunting parties, treating the invaders like game animals to be stalked and killed for sport. In Moscow, a single human soldier held off an entire Velkhari platoon for 6 hours, using nothing but primitive firearms and improvised traps. When they finally cornered him, he was grinning despite mortal wounds. You want to know a secret? He said in broken Velkhari, learned somehow during the invasion. We've been preparing for something like you our whole history. Every war, every conflict, every violent game and story. It was all practice for this moment. He died laughing. The reports coming in from across Earth painted a picture that defied everything the Velkhari knew about warfare. Humans weren't just resisting, they were escalating. Each Velkhari atrocity was met with increasingly creative and brutal responses. When the Velkhari destroyed a city, the humans didn't mourn. They used it as motivation. They turned their dead into martyrs, their destroyed homes into symbols of resistance. They sang songs about the invasion, wrote poems about killing Velkhari, and shared tactical information through something they called memes, weaponized ideas that spread faster than any plague. Captain Morok commanded a unit trying to hold a strategic position in Berlin. They had fortified an area near the Brandenburg Gate, setting up shield generators and automated defenses. By all military calculations, it should have been impregnable. The humans attacked at dawn, but not with soldiers. They sent children first, unarmed children who walked slowly toward the Velkhari positions. Morok's troops hesitated, unsure how to respond. The Velkhari were conquerors, not monsters. They didn't kill younglings. That hesitation cost them. The children were carrying biological weapons, diseases engineered to target Velkhari physiology. By the time Morok realized the danger, half his troops were already infected. The humans had turned their own offspring into weapons delivery systems. As his soldiers fell sick, the real attack began. Human forces poured in from all directions, but they weren't just trying to reclaim the position. They were putting on a show. Speakers blared music as humans performed elaborate kills, recording everything for broadcast. Morok watched one human soldier actually dance, while firing two weapons simultaneously, moving to the rhythm of the music as Velkari soldiers fell around him. It was graceful, deadly, and utterly insane. "What are you?" Morok gasped as a human stood over him, weapon pointed at his head. The human tilted his head, considering. "We're the species that invented horror as entertainment, that glorifies violence in our myths, that plays games about war and death for fun. We're the ones who look at the darkness and ask, 'Is that all you've got?'" The weapon fired. Back on the command ship, Zektar received report after report of similar incidents. The invasion was stalling. Worse, it was being turned into some kind of perverse performance art by the humans. They live-streamed battles, created viral videos of killing Velkari, and turned resistance into a global phenomenon. "Sir," his communications officer interrupted his dark thoughts, "we're receiving a transmission from the human leadership." "Put it through," Zektar ordered. The view screen showed a human military commander, but behind him wasn't a war room. It was what looked like a television studio. Cameras, lights, and production equipment filled the space. "Commander Zektar," the human said calmly, "I'm General Harrison of the United Earth Defense Force. I wanted to thank you for providing such excellent content for our species. The ratings have been phenomenal." "Ratings?" Zektar sputtered. "We're invading your world." "Yes. And it's the most exciting thing to happen to humanity in decades. Do you know how bored we were? How many generations we've gone without a real challenge? You've united our entire species in a way nothing else could have." Harrison leaned forward, and his friendly expression turned predatory. "But here's the thing about humans, Commander. We've spent our entire evolutionary history killing each other for resources, ideology, or sometimes just for fun. We've gotten very, very good at it. And now, for the first time, we have an enemy everyone can agree on. You've given us permission to unleash every dark impulse we've been suppressing in the name of civilization." The transmission switched to footage from around the world. Humans celebrating in the streets, not despite the invasion, but because of it. Children playing games where they pretended to kill Velkari. Artists creating monuments from destroyed Velkari equipment. Scientists reverse engineering captured technology with gleeful enthusiasm. "You thought you were bringing terror to our world," Harrison continued, "but terror is our oldest friend. We tell stories about it to our children. We pay money to experience it in controlled doses. We've made it into an art form, a science, and now a weapon." The general's smile widened. "Your mistake was thinking we'd react to invasion like other species. But humans don't just adapt to threats. We adopt them. We take the worst things that happen to us and make them part of our identity. In a few generations, this invasion will be a holiday. Children will dress up as Velkari for fun, and we'll eat candy shaped like your ships." Zektar's scales had gone completely white, a color of absolute dread. "You're insane. Your entire species is insane." "Maybe," Harrison agreed. "But it's a functional insanity, one that's about to spread beyond Earth. See, we've learned a lot from this invasion. Your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses, and we're already planning to visit your worlds, not to conquer them. That's your thing. We're coming to teach them what we've learned. We're going to share the gift of human perspective." The transmission cut to show human ships, crude adaptations of Velkari technology, already under construction. But what truly terrified Zektar was the enthusiasm on the builders' faces. They weren't building weapons of desperation, but toys for a species that had found a new game. "We should have studied them more carefully," Zektar's science officer whispered. "Their history is nothing but violence. They poisoned their own atmosphere learning to split atoms. They created weapons that could end their civilization and pointed them at each other for generations. They torture and kill their own kind for entertainment in their fiction. How did we think they'd react to external threats? On Earth, the tide had fully turned. Velkhari forces found themselves hunted for sport. Humans competed to create the most creative kills, sharing techniques through global networks. Resistance groups gave themselves colorful names and created merchandise. The invasion had become commercialized rebellion. In Tokyo, a group of humans had captured a Velkhari squad alive and forced them to participate in what they called a game show. The aliens had to complete challenges while avoiding increasingly creative death traps, all broadcast live to millions of cheering viewers. One Velkhari soldier, driven to the edge of sanity, screamed at his captors, "Why are you enjoying this?" A young human woman, dressed in colorful clothing decorated with cartoon versions of dead Velkhari, shrugged. "Because it's fun? Because we've been waiting our whole lives for something like this? Because every video game, every movie, every book about alien invasion was preparing us for this moment?" She leaned closer, her eyes bright with an enthusiasm that chilled the alien to his core. "You gave us permission to be our worst selves and told us it was for the greater good. Do you have any idea what a gift that is to a species that's been trying to pretend it's civilized?" The Velkhari Empire had conquered worlds through fear. They had subjugated species by breaking their will to resist. But humans didn't break. They bent, adapted, and came back stronger and more creatively violent than before. They turned suffering into strength, fear into fuel, and death into entertainment. Word began to spread through Velkhari ranks. Earth was not worth taking. The humans were not a species to be conquered, but a plague to be avoided. Soldiers who had faced death on 100 worlds without flinching began to refuse deployment to Earth. They spoke in whispers of humans who laughed while dying, who turned their children into weapons, who made art from atrocity. The breaking point came when human forces successfully captured a Velkhari warship intact. Instead of using it to escape Earth or as a bargaining chip, they turned it into what they called a museum of human ingenuity. They invited Velkhari prisoners to tour it, showing them exactly how each system had been subverted, each defense overcome. "You see?" the human guide explained cheerfully to a group of horrified Velkhari officers. "We're not trying to hide how we did it. We want you to know. We want your empire to understand that we can take everything you are and make it ours. Your technology, your tactics, even your terror. We'll absorb it all and make it human." The guide stopped at a display showing human children playing with toy versions of Velkhari weapons. "In 50 years, your invasion will be a theme park ride. Kids will wait in line to experience authentic Velkhari terror for fun. That's what humans do. We take our nightmares and sell tickets to them." The emergency council aboard the Velkhari flagship had been in session for 6 hours. Commander Zektar sat at the head of the table, his scales a mottled pattern of stress colors, as he listened to report after report of failures, setbacks, and horrors beyond comprehension. "The humans have started something they call Velkhari Season," Intelligence Officer Kix reported, her voice trembling. "They've turned hunting our ground forces into an organized sport. They have point systems, leaderboards, and merchandise." She activated a hologram showing a human wearing what appeared to be a necklace made from Velkhari scales. The human was smiling broadly, posing for something called a selfie with burning Velkhari equipment in the background. "They're selling these as souvenirs," Kix continued, "along with something called action figures that depict our soldiers dying in various ways. The profits are funding their resistance movements." Strategic Advisor Heklon slammed 2 of his fists on the table. "This is madness. No species behaves this way. War is meant to be a serious matter of survival and dominance, not entertainment." "The humans appear to disagree," Science Officer Kretok interjected. My analysis of their neural patterns during combat shows activation in pleasure centers typically associated with recreational activities. They are literally experiencing joy while fighting us. Zektar studied the data scrolling across his personal display. Casualty rates were approaching unacceptable levels. Not because human weapons were particularly effective against Velkhari armor, but because humans had turned asymmetric warfare into an art form. They used their own cities as weapons, collapsing buildings on Velkhari patrols. They poisoned food supplies, knowing that their own people might starve just to deny resources to the invaders. They strapped explosives to domestic animals and sent them into Velkhari camps. No tactic was too extreme, no sacrifice too great. "Show me the Paris footage again," Zektar ordered grimly. The hologram shifted to show what had once been a Velkhari forward operating base near the Eiffel Tower. Now it was a smoldering crater. The humans had tunneled beneath it for days, filling the tunnels with explosive materials. When they detonated it, they took out not only the base, but a significant portion of their own city. The disturbing part was the celebration afterward. Humans danced in the streets, spray-painting graffiti on the remaining walls that read, "Worth it," and 10-10 would explode again. Commander, Communications Specialist Yarka announced, "We're receiving another broadcast from the humans." This time, the screen showed not military personnel, but what appeared to be civilian content creators. A young human with brightly colored hair grinned at the camera. "What's up, Earth? It's your boy Jake coming at you with another Velkhari hunting tips video. Today we're going to show you how to make thermite from common household items. Remember to like and subscribe. And use discount code DEATHTOVELKHARI for 20% off your first month of Raid Shadow Legends." Zektar watched in horrified fascination as the human cheerfully demonstrated how to create military-grade explosives while intermittently promoting various products and services. The casual mix of commerce and violence was beyond anything in Velkhari experience. "Turn it off," he ordered. But Yarka shook her head. "Sir, you need to see this next part." The video continued, showing the human and his friends successfully using their homemade weapons against a Velkhari patrol. The footage was edited with music, slow-motion effects, and comedic sound effects when Velkhari soldiers fell. At the end, statistics appeared on screen showing kill counts and style points. "This video has been viewed 47 million times in the last day," Yarka reported. "The humans are turning our soldiers' deaths into viral content. They're monetizing our invasion." On the planet's surface, the situation was deteriorating rapidly for Velkhari forces. In New Delhi, squad leader Vethmar led what remained of his unit through streets that had become a nightmare maze of traps and ambushes. Every building could be rigged to explode. Every civilian could be a suicide bomber. Every child could be carrying a biological weapon. "Movement ahead," his scout reported. Vethmar raised his plasma rifle, expecting another attack. Instead, he saw a group of elderly humans sitting in the middle of the street, apparently having a picnic. They had laid out blankets and were sharing a meal, completely ignoring the alien soldiers. "What are they doing?" one of his soldiers whispered, as if in answer. One of the elderly humans stood up slowly, joints creaking with age. She walked toward the Velkhari squad with a gentle smile, holding out what appeared to be a plate of food. "You boys must be hungry," she said in accented galactic standard. "Have some sandwiches." Vethmar's threat detection system screamed warnings, but he couldn't identify any weapons. The old woman seemed genuinely kind, reminiscent of the matriarchs in his own species. Against his better judgment, he lowered his weapon. "We do not require your food," he said carefully. "Nonsense," she replied, continuing to approach. "Everyone needs to eat, even invaders." She was 3 meters away when Vethmar noticed the dead man's switch in her other hand. The explosion took out his entire squad and half a city block. The last thing he heard was another elderly human saying, "Martha always did make the best sandwiches. Shame about the neighborhood, though." In the orbiting command ship, Medical Officer Kretok was dealing with a crisis that threatened to unravel Velkari forces from within. Soldiers returning from the planet were displaying unprecedented psychological trauma. "They won't stop smiling," one soldier whispered, rocking back and forth in the medical bay. "Even when they're dying, they smile. They laugh. They take pictures with our corpses and share them with their young." Another soldier had refused to eat for 3 days. "The humans put their offspring in the food distribution centers," he explained. "Children working happily alongside adults to poison our supplies. When we discovered the contamination, the children laughed. They thought poisoning us was a game." Kretok's analysis was grim. "Commander, our forces are experiencing something humans call existential dread. We've never encountered a species that responds to invasion with joy. It's breaking our soldiers' understanding of reality." The breaking point for many came when humans started what they called Velkari adoption programs. Captured Velkari soldiers weren't tortured or interrogated in traditional ways. Instead, human families would adopt them, forcing them to participate in family activities while live streaming the whole experience. One unfortunate Velkari lieutenant found himself dressed in colorful human clothing, seated at a dinner table while a human family cheerfully asked him about his home world between passing dishes of food. "So, Groktar, can I call you Grok? Tell us about Velkari holidays," the human mother said brightly while cameras rolled. "Do you have anything like Christmas? We're thinking of incorporating some Velkari traditions into our celebrations, cultural exchange and all that." The psychological torture of forced normalcy while being treated as entertainment broke hardened soldiers faster than any physical pain could have. Back on Earth, human creativity in warfare reached new heights. In Sydney, a group of engineers had repurposed a Velkari weather control station. Instead of using it for tactical advantage, they programmed it to create cloud formations that spelled out insults in Velkari script. In São Paulo, street artists turned destroyed Velkari vehicles into art installations. One particularly popular piece featured a Velkari tank converted into a children's playground, complete with slides made from armor plating and swings hung from gun barrels. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were transforming the very concept of warfare into something unrecognizable. They crowdfunded weapons development, held design contests for trap mechanisms, and created reality shows where contestants competed to develop the most effective resistance tactics. General Harrison appeared on global broadcasts regularly, but not from a bunker or secure location. He hosted his briefings from different locations each time, sometimes from active battlefields, sometimes from schools where children were learning Velkari anatomy for beginners, sometimes from factories producing artisanal anti-alien weaponry. "The thing about humans," he explained during one broadcast, standing in front of a Velkari ship that had been converted into a nightclub, "is that we've always been our own worst enemy. We've spent millennia perfecting ways to hurt each other. The only thing that's changed is now we have someone everyone agrees deserves it." The camera panned to show humans dancing inside the converted ship, while Velkari prisoners were forced to work as bartenders, serving drinks with names like Plasma Rifle Punch and Scales on the Beach. "We want to thank the Velkari Empire," Harrison continued, "for giving humanity a common purpose. Sales of weapons, survival gear, and Velkari-themed merchandise have revitalized our economy. Death rates from human-on-human violence are at an all-time low. You've done more for world peace than any treaty or organization in history." On the Velkari command ship, a junior officer burst into the council chamber. "Commander, the humans have breached our communications network." "How?" Zektar demanded. They held a hacking competition, sir. Thousands of their computer specialists competed to see who could break our encryption first. The winner is a 14-year-old human who goes by the name Alien Slayer 69. He's currently live streaming our tactical data while playing something called Lo-Fi Beats to Study and Plan Guerrilla Warfare 2. The view screen flickered, then displayed the young human hacker. He wore primitive optical enhancers and consumed a beverage with excessive sugar content while casually scrolling through classified Velkari military files. "Yo, chat, check this out," the young human said to his audience. "Their shield frequencies are totally predictable. I'm going to drop a tutorial on how to build a frequency disruptor from old microwave parts. Don't forget to hit that notification bell." Zektar watched helplessly as their military secrets were disseminated across human networks faster than his tech specialists could change them. Within hours, civilians worldwide were building shield disruptors in their garages, following step-by-step video guides complete with cheerful background music and sponsorship messages. The war had become a participatory spectacle. Humans who couldn't fight directly contributed in other ways. Grandmothers knitted explosive vests with encouraging messages embroidered on them. Children drew pictures of dying Velkari that were turned into propaganda posters. Even human corporations got involved, with fast food chains offering Velkari meal deals where proceeds went to fund resistance operations. In London, what had started as a siege of a Velkari stronghold had transformed into something resembling a music festival. Humans set up stages around the perimeter, with bands performing songs about killing aliens while actual combat continued. Food vendors sold snacks, families brought picnic blankets, and entrepreneurs sold T-shirts with slogans like, "I survived the Velkari invasion and all I got was this awesome war story." Captain Morok, one of the few Velkari officers still holding a position on Earth, watched this spectacle through his scope. His unit controlled a fortified position in what used to be a shopping mall, but they were surrounded by what could only be described as a carnival of violence. "Sir," his lieutenant reported, "the humans are setting up something called a dunk tank, where civilians can pay to drop captured Velkari soldiers into water. The proceeds go to something called Doctors Without Borders but with Guns." Morok closed all four of his eyes in despair. "How do we fight an enemy that turns war into a celebration?" The answer came in the form of a human child, no more than 8 years old, who approached their fortification carrying a white flag. Morok's soldiers held their fire, watching as the child carefully made her way to their entrance. "I have a message," she announced in perfect Velkari, learned from educational videos that taught human children the invaders' language as a fun activity. Morok accepted the paper she offered. It was covered in colorful drawings of flowers, rainbows, and dismembered Velkari soldiers. The text, written in cheerful multicolored markers, read, "Dear alien invaders, the Henderson family cordially invites you to surrender. We're having a barbecue this weekend and thought you might want to join us before we have to kill you all. We'll have vegetarian options. P.S. If you don't surrender by Friday, little Susie has been working on a science fair project involving your weakness to certain sound frequencies. She's very excited to test it. Love and Rockets, the Hendersons." At the bottom was a crayon drawing of what appeared to be Velkari soldiers exploding while humans roasted marshmallows over the flames. "This is psychological warfare unlike anything in the military texts," Morok muttered. The child skipped away, humming a tune that Morok's translator identified as Baby Shark, remixed with the sounds of Velkari death screams. It had apparently reached #1 on something called Spotify. The Velkari Empire had built its reputation on fear. Worlds surrendered rather than face their wrath. Species submitted to avoid destruction. But humans had taken that fear and commercialized it, packaged it, and sold it back to them as entertainment. In Tokyo, an entrepreneur had opened what she called an escape room experience using a captured Velkari drop pod. Participants paid to be locked inside and had to figure out how to sabotage it before time ran out. all while actors dressed as Velkhari soldiers provided authentic alien terror. "It's completely safe," the owner assured reporters, while explosions from actual combat could be heard in the distance. "We wanted to give people who can't fight on the front lines a chance to experience the thrill of resistance. We're booked solid for the next 3 months." The psychological impact on Velkhari forces was devastating. Soldiers who had conquered worlds without hesitation began refusing orders. Some claimed illness, others simply deserted. The medical bays filled with troops displaying symptoms of what humans called nervous breakdowns. "They're not afraid of us," one soldier repeated endlessly, rocking back and forth. "They should be afraid. Everyone is afraid, but they laugh. They always laugh." Science Officer Kretok presented his latest findings to the War Council. "I've isolated the factor that makes humans so unusual. They possess a neurological trait they call gallows humor, the ability to find amusement in dire situations. Combined with their pack-bonding instincts and tendency toward risk-taking behavior, it creates a species that literally thrives under conditions that would break others." He displayed brain scans comparing human neural activity during combat to that of other conquered species. Where others showed fear responses, humans showed patterns similar to play behavior in juveniles. "They're not pretending to enjoy this," Kretok concluded heavily. "They genuinely find warfare against us recreational. We've given a species evolved for conflict exactly what they've been subconsciously craving: guilt-free violence with a clear enemy." The final straw came when humans launched what they called the Great Velkhari Cook-Off. Captured Velkhari were forced to judge human dishes made from improvised ingredients, while celebrity chefs competed for the title of Best Apocalypse Cuisine. "Today's secret ingredient is Velkhari ration packs," the host announced to thunderous applause. "Chefs, you have 1 hour to turn these alien MREs into something fabulous. Remember, presentation counts and bonus points if you can make our Velkhari judges cry." Commander Zektar watched this broadcast from his command chair, his scales now permanently locked in a pattern of defeat. Around him, his bridge crew worked in silence, all displaying similar signs of psychological exhaustion. "Sir," his communications officer spoke quietly, "we're receiving priority messages from the Empire. 17 different worlds are reporting human broadcasts reaching their populations. Some planets are adopting human customs. There are reports of Velkhari invasion reenactment clubs forming on peaceful worlds." The implications were staggering. Humanity's response to invasion wasn't just defeating the Velkhari, it was culturally contaminating the entire empire. Their approach to warfare as entertainment was spreading like a virus through the galaxy's information networks. The High Council of the Velkhari Empire convened an emergency session for the first time in 3 centuries. Representatives from every conquered world, tributary system, and client species filled the vast chamber. At the center, Emperor Zakthu himself presided over what historians would later call the most important meeting in galactic history. "The situation on Earth has become untenable," Chancellor Mekvar announced to the assembly. "What began as a routine conquest has evolved into something that threatens the very foundation of our empire." Holographic displays around the chamber showed scenes from Earth that defied comprehension. Humans celebrating in streets littered with Velkhari dead. Children playing with toys modeled after Velkhari corpses. Entertainment programs featuring Velkhari prisoners as unwilling participants in game shows. And everywhere, always, the sound of human laughter. "Commander Zektar," the Emperor's voice resonated through the chamber, "you led this invasion. Explain to us how a primitive species has reduced our forces to this state." Zektar rose slowly, his once proud bearing now stooped with exhaustion. His scales, which should have shown the deep purple of a victorious commander, were instead locked in the pale gray of deepest shame. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice hollow. We made a fundamental error. We assumed humans would respond to invasion like every other species we've encountered. With fear, with desperation, with eventual submission. He activated his own holographic display, showing casualty statistics that made the assembly rustle with discomfort. Instead, we encountered a species that has weaponized joy. They don't just resist, they celebrate resistance. They don't just fight, they transform fighting into art, entertainment, and profit. The display shifted to show human social media metrics. This graph shows human engagement with invasion-related content. Their entire planet's information network is dominated by what they call Velkhari memes, ideas packaged as humor that spread faster than any weapon. They've turned our soldiers into jokes, our technology into toys, our invasion into the most popular entertainment event in their history. Ambassador Keltar from the Nexus world stood. Surely this is exaggeration. No species can sustain such behavior under genuine threat of extinction. In response, Zektar played a recording from Earth. It showed a human news broadcast where the anchor cheerfully reported, Day 47 of the Velkhari invasion, and humanity's kill-to-death ratio continues to improve. Let's check in with our weatherman Tom for the alien hunting forecast. The scene shifted to show a human meteorologist standing in front of a map marked with Velkhari positions. Thanks, Janet. We're looking at perfect hunting conditions in the northeast, with clear skies and minimal Velkhari air support. Remember, folks, sunscreen is important when you're out there fighting for humanity's survival. Now here's Bob with sports, where the New York Giants are hosting a special Tackle a Velkhari halftime show. The ambassador sat down heavily, his tentacles writhing in distress. Your Majesty, Science Advisor Kretok stepped forward. I've completed my analysis of human psychology. What we're facing isn't a military problem. It's an evolutionary one. Humans are unique in the galaxy. They're the only species we've encountered that evolved not just through cooperation, but through constant internal conflict. He displayed a timeline of human history. Look at their past. They've been killing each other since before they developed language. Every advancement in their technology was either created for war or immediately adapted for it. They split the atom and their first thought was to make a bomb. They developed flight and immediately used it to drop explosives on each other. They created global communication networks and used them to share videos of violence set to music. The Emperor leaned forward. Are you saying they're simply violent primitives? No, Your Majesty. That's what makes them so dangerous. They're not primitive. They're specialized. Humans have evolved to find joy in conflict, to bond through shared danger, to create art from atrocity. They haven't transcended their violent nature. They've refined it into a cultural cornerstone. The Council watched more footage from Earth. A human soldier, mortally wounded, used his final moments to pose for a photograph with his squad, all of them smiling despite the carnage around them. The image was already being printed on T-shirts with the caption, Squad Goals. Show them the Seattle incident, Emperor Zak Thu commanded grimly. The hologram shifted to show what had once been a major Velkhari landing zone. Now it was something else entirely. The humans had transformed it into what they called a theme park. The crashed Velkhari ships had been converted into attractions. The defense turrets were now part of an interactive shooting gallery. Where thousands had died, humans now brought their families for entertainment. But the truly disturbing part was the gift shop. Humans queued to buy replica Velkhari weapons, plush toys shaped like Velkhari soldiers, and something called snow globes that showed miniature recreations of battles when shaken. They're commodifying our invasion, a council member whispered in horror. They're turning our attempt to conquer them into a business opportunity. On Earth, the situation had reached a point that no military doctrine could have predicted. The city of Mumbai had declared itself the Velkhari hunting capital of the world, and was hosting an international tournament. Teams from around the globe competed to see who could eliminate Velkhari forces in the most creative ways. Welcome to the finals of the first annual Velkhari Elimination Championship. The announcer's voice boomed across the stadium that had been hastily constructed from the ruins of a Velkhari forward base. Today's competitors will be judged on style, efficiency, and crowd appeal. The audience, tens of thousands of humans who had paid for tickets, cheered as teams demonstrated increasingly elaborate methods of fighting the invaders. One team had trained dolphins to carry explosives. Another had modified agricultural drones to spray acid. A group of elderly women from Japan demonstrated how to turn knitting needles into projectile weapons. Lieutenant Thekvar, one of the few Velkhari officers still attempting to maintain order, watched this spectacle from his hidden position. His unit had been reduced to hiding in the ruins, moving only at night, trying to avoid what humans called stream snipers, civilians who hunted them specifically to broadcast the kills live. "Sir," his last remaining soldier whispered, "I've intercepted their communications. They're taking bets on how long we'll last." Tekvar looked at the odds being displayed on a massive screen visible from their position. His unit was listed at 12-1 to survive the night. The favorite method of their elimination was something called Death by TikTok Dance Challenge. "I don't even know what that means," Thekvar muttered, then activated his emergency beacon. "Command, this is Mumbai Unit 7, requesting immediate extraction. Morale is non-existent. The humans are about to make us part of something called a viral video." "Negative, Mumbai 7, came the response. "All extraction craft are grounded. The humans have started a drinking game where they take a shot every time they down one of our ships. We've lost 17 vessels to intoxicated civilians with improvised weapons." In the command ship, discussions had moved beyond military strategy to something approaching philosophy. The Velkhari were trying to understand not just how to fight humans, but what humans represented in the cosmic order. "Every species we've encountered fears death," military historian Yolgath explained to the assembled commanders. "It's the fundamental constant that makes conquest possible. The fear of extinction drives surrender. But humans—" He gestured helplessly at the screens showing Earth. "Humans have made death into entertainment. They've monetized mortality. They've turned the survival instinct into a competitive sport. How do you conquer a species that treats existential threats as content creation opportunities?" The answer came from an unexpected source. A junior intelligence analyst named Veltor had been studying human culture deeply, immersing herself in their history, their arts, their philosophies. She requested permission to address the council. "Speak," the Emperor commanded. Veltor's scales shifted nervously as she stood before the most powerful beings in the Empire. "Your Majesty, I believe I understand why we're losing. We're not just fighting humans. We're fighting human culture, and that culture is a weapon more powerful than any plasma cannon." She activated a presentation she'd prepared. "Human culture is viral. It spreads through contact, adapts to new hosts, and transforms everything it touches. Look at our own forces. Soldiers returning from Earth don't just bring back trauma. They bring back human concepts, memes, jokes, new ways of thinking." The presentation showed intercepted communications between Velkhari soldiers. They had started using human slang, sharing human content, even adopting human humor styles. One message thread showed Velkhari troops sharing edited videos of their officers set to human music. "It's already spreading through our empire," Veltor continued. "Young Velkhari on 17 worlds have started something called Human Appreciation Clubs. They're studying human resistance tactics as art forms. Some are even suggesting we should thank the humans for making life more interesting." The Emperor's scales flashed dangerous colors. "You're saying human culture is infectious?" "More than infectious, Your Majesty. It's revolutionary. Humans have weaponized the concept of fun itself. They've turned rebellion into entertainment, resistance into art, death into a punchline. And that worldview is more contagious than any biological weapon. On Earth, confirmation of this theory was playing out in real time. A group of captured Velkhari soldiers had been subjected to what humans called intensive cultural exchange. They were forced to watch human entertainment, participate in human games, and immerse themselves in human social media. The results were disturbing to Velkhari Command. The prisoners had started creating their own content. One group had formed what they called a band and were performing songs about their experience as invaders. The lyrics, translated from Velkhari, included lines like, "We came to conquer, bring the fear, but found the humans drinking beer. They turned our invasion to a game. Now I'll never be the same. Velkhari in the club, everybody get up." The music video, featuring Velkhari soldiers dancing awkwardly while humans cheered them on, had garnered millions of views across the galaxy. "They're not trying to break us through torture," one prisoner explained in a recorded interview. "They're breaking us through inclusion. They're treating us like entertainment. And the worst part is, I'm starting to enjoy it." The final assault on Earth had been planned meticulously. The Velkhari Empire committed its greatest fleet, its most advanced weapons, its finest soldiers. It was to be a demonstration of overwhelming force that would finally break human resistance. The humans knew it was coming. Their intelligence networks, bolstered by teenagers who treated hacking alien systems like a video game, had given them weeks to prepare. When the Velkhari fleet arrived in Earth orbit, they found something unprecedented. The humans had written messages on their continents, visible from space. Using lights, fires, and coordinated movements of millions of people, they had spelled out various messages. "Welcome to the final boss fight. GGEZ. Rate and subscribe. Your princess is in another star system." But the largest message, written across the entire Pacific Ocean using a fleet of ships arranged in formation, simply read, "Let's play." The space battle that followed was broadcast live across Earth and, through hijacked Velkhari communication systems, across the galaxy. Humans had turned their planet's defense into the ultimate reality show. Commentary teams provided play-by-play analysis. Graphics showed statistics and player ratings. Sponsorship deals were announced between explosions. "Oh, what a move by the European Defense Fleet!" one announcer shouted as human ships performed maneuvers that defied both physics and sanity. "They're using the debris from their own destroyed vessels as kinetic weapons. That's the kind of creative gameplay we love to see." The battle raged for days, but the outcome was never really in doubt. Not because of superior human technology or tactics, but because of something far more fundamental. The Velkhari were fighting for conquest. The humans were playing for points. When a human pilot named Chen Wei managed to ram his fighter into the Velkhari flagship's main weapon array, disabling it at the cost of his own life, Earth erupted in celebration. Within hours, Chen Wei merchandise was available online. His final words, "Leroy Jenkins," became a rallying cry, despite most people not understanding the ancient reference. The Emperor himself watched as his greatest fleet was slowly dismantled by a species that treated warfare like a sporting event. His advisors reported something even more troubling. The battle was being watched live on hundreds of worlds throughout the galaxy. Subjected species were cheering for the humans. Some were adopting human tactics, human attitudes, human humor. "Your Majesty," Chancellor Mekvar said quietly, "we're not just losing a battle. We're losing control of the narrative. The humans have turned our invasion into their story, and everyone wants to see how it ends." The breaking point came when the humans launched their counter-offensive, not with warships, but with what they called cultural ambassadors. Hundreds of vessels, each loaded with human media, music, games, and memes, scattered throughout Velkhari space. They didn't attack. They broadcast. They shared. They invited other species to join what they called the Galactic Resistance Cinematic Universe. They offered franchising opportunities for Earth-style resistance movements. They provided tutorial videos on guerrilla warfare with cheerful hosts and upbeat music. On Velkari Prime itself, young citizens began gathering in secret to consume human content. They shared human memes, told human jokes, played human games. The concept of finding joy in chaos, of turning fear into fun, spread like wildfire through a population that had known only rigid order for millennia. "Sir," an aide reported to Emperor Zakthu, "there are reports of Velkari citizens creating something called fan fiction about the human resistance. Some are romantic in nature. They're shipping human resistance fighters with Velkari soldiers." The Emperor closed all 6 of his eyes in despair. "What does shipping mean?" I'm not entirely certain, Your Majesty, but it seems to involve imagining romantic relationships between enemies and creating artistic content about it. It's apparently very popular among our youth." The War Council reconvened one final time. The mood was funereal. Commander Zektar presented his final report. "The invasion of Earth has failed," he stated simply. "But more than that, it has backfired in ways we never imagined. Human culture has infected our empire. Their concepts of entertainment, their attitude toward conflict, their ability to find humor in horror, it's spreading faster than we can contain it." He showed projections of cultural contamination throughout Velkari space. Worlds that had been stable for centuries were experiencing unprecedented social changes. Young Velkari were questioning the rigid hierarchy, creating art, forming bands, starting podcasts about their feelings. "We didn't just fail to conquer Earth," Zektar concluded. "We gave humanity a galactic audience. We turned them into heroes of their own story, and now everyone wants to be part of that story." Emperor Zakthu stood slowly, his ancient frame bearing the weight of an empire's failure. "What do you recommend, Commander?" "Complete withdrawal," Zektar said without hesitation. "Cut all contact with Earth. Quarantine human space. Try to limit the cultural damage. Hope that in time, our people forget about humans and their infectious worldview." "And if the humans pursue us?" On the main screen, a message appeared. General Harrison's face smiled out at them with that distinctly human expression that had haunted Velkari nightmares. "Hey there, Velkari Empire," the human leader said casually. "So, great game, really enjoyable. The ratings were fantastic. But here's the thing. We're thinking of taking this show on the road. Maybe visit some of your worlds, share some of our culture, teach others how to resist tyranny with style and humor. What do you think? Could be fun." The transmission included a preview of something called Humanity's Galactic Liberation Tour, featuring concert dates on Velkari worlds, meet and greets with resistance fighters, and workshops on finding your inner human. "They're not going to invade us," the Emperor realized with growing horror. "They're going to influencer us to death." The Velkari Empire, which had stood for 10,000 years on a foundation of fear and order, began its collapse not with a bang, but with a meme. The withdrawal from Earth was chaotic and humiliating, broadcast live for the entertainment of billions. Human streamers provided commentary as Velkari forces fled, turning military defeat into must-see content. "Don't forget to like and subscribe," one streamer said, as the last Velkari ship limped away from Earth. "And remember, if alien invaders come to your world, just remember the human way. Make it weird, make it fun, and make it profitable." The aftermath was swift and irreversible. Across the galaxy, subject species began their own resistance movements, inspired by Earth's example. They didn't just fight, they celebrated. They didn't just resist, they created content. The rigid order of the Velkari Empire crumbled under an assault of jokes, games, and viral videos. On a monitoring station at the edge of human space, a lone Velkari observer filed the final report on the failed invasion. Classification: Homo sapiens. Threat level: existential. Not through military might or technological advancement, but through something far more dangerous. They have weaponized joy itself. They are a species that looks at the darkness between stars and asks, "Is that all you've got?" They are the antibody to empire, the antidote to tyranny, and the punchline to the cosmic joke. Recommendation: avoid contact at all costs. Their worldview is more infectious than any plague, more destructive than any weapon. They do not conquer worlds. They make conquest itself seem boring by comparison. Final note: I have been observing human broadcasts for too long. I find myself enjoying them. I have started what humans call a reaction channel, where I review human resistance videos. I fear it is too late for me. Tell my mate cluster I died with what humans call dank memes in my heart. Signing off, and remember to hit that notification bell for more content. The galaxy would never be the same. The age of empires built on fear had ended. The age of resistance as entertainment had begun. And somewhere on Earth, humans were already planning their next season, because the show, as they said, must go on.